It's a Thursday. That means we have football, but the best part is we got Dolphin football. Dolphins and Bills tonight, but that also means we got to make sure we set our fantasy football lineup for week 2. And the only man who helps us do that every Thursday is CBS Sports Fantasy Football expert Jamey Eisenberg here with us. Jamey, hello. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. What's most disappointing players in week 1 fantasy football wise for you were whom?
The tight ends, without a doubt. You had Laporta, Kelsey, McBride, Andrews, Kittle. Pitt scored a touchdown, but he wasn't great. It was essentially, and then you had 2 guys that were, drafted as starters, and Jake Ferguson and David Njoku get hurt. So it was probably just across the board. If Isaiah Likely, who wasn't rostered in the majority of leagues, didn't have the game that he had, most people would be saying tight ends should be eliminated from fantasy. And a lot of people are probably saying that anyway.
Now, who are some of the guys this week who the waiver wire, everybody's been racing to pick up?
Isaiah Likely for sure. Jordan Mason, starting for Christian McCaffrey, who was another disappointing situation. Everybody expected him to play that game Monday night, and it's hard to find replacements. So Mason is up there. You have Zach Charbonnet, who could be starting for Ken Walker. We'll find that out this week. You have Brandon Cooks and Rashid Shaheed coming off good performances at the receiver spot. And then the quarterback is Baker Mayfield, 4 touchdown game. He's had a great stretch to end last season, so a lot of people don't draft backup quarterbacks, but for those that were looking to replace Jordan Love, another guy who got hurt, he certainly has an opportunity to build off that game against Detroit this week.
So before we get to the fantasy implications for tonight's game, give me some thoughts on what you saw out of the Dolphins in general last week.
Slow start. I thought they'd have a little bit more offense across the board. I'm sure Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane getting banged up throughout the course of the game changed a little bit of how that game went. And clearly you had the pregame situation with Tyreek Hill. Thankfully, he came out from a performance standpoint and does what he's capable of doing. Jalen Waddle was great as well. You just missed the second touchdown from Tua. I think had he got that, everybody would have been a little bit more at ease with how that performance was across the board. But look, 300 yards and a touchdown. Tyreek Hill looking like the best receiver in football as usual. Jalen Waddle over 90 yards receiving. So you know what you're getting from those guys.
Kind of funny, we're a little bit down on Tua's week 1 performance, and he certainly wasn't great in the first half. Led the league in passing yards last week. Was one of just 2 players who threw over 300 yards.
Yeah, he's amazing, and the system is amazing, and thankfully they're at the part of the schedule where they usually have performed well, at least under Mike McDaniel. And so tonight's game is going to be fun. Everybody wants to see the Dolphins beat the Bills that lives in South Florida, and I'm sure they're going to give them all they can handle. And they're going to see if this Buffalo defense is really back to, performing at the level that they're capable of, having replaced 2 safeties. We know, one of them's down here, replacing their middle linebacker. So they did a good job in some, interesting weather. It wasn't exactly crazy Buffalo weather, but it was windy against the Cardinals offense. We'll see if they can slow down the Miami offense as well.
All right. So what do we like for tonight? And what do we do about the Dolphins backfield?
So, Raheem Mostert's out. I think Jeff Wilson just kind of slides into that role, and you can use him as at least a flex, maybe a number 2 running back. If Achane is out, then Jeff Wilson becomes a top 20 guy, and Jalen Wright becomes a borderline flex. I just don't want people to overvalue Jalen Wright, because while he should be better than Jeff Wilson, clearly the Dolphins don't view him that way right now. So if you have an opportunity to stash Jalen Wright, just with the idea that if Mostert and or Achane are going to miss a couple of weeks, then maybe we see the best of Wright moving forward. But for now, Wilson's a plug-and-play option for Mostert. If Achane starts, you start him. There's no question about it, because he's just got so much upside and potential, and would clearly benefit if Mostert's not there. But across the board, you're starting the usual Dolphins. You're starting Tua as a number 1 quarterback. You're starting Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. They're 2 top 15 receivers. Tyreek's number 2 for me this week behind Cooper Kupp. And then for Buffalo, it's Josh Allen, slam dunk, number 1 quarterback in fantasy. We thought, okay, how's it going to look with the receiving core being different? He throws for 230, 220 and whatever, 200 plus yards and 2 touchdowns, runs for 39 yards and scores 2 touchdowns. He does this with this receiving core, and they win the division and make the playoffs as a potential 1 or 2 seed. He's going to be the MVP. So you got to slow him down if you're the Dolphins. You're starting him. You're starting James Cook. I think Dalton Kincaid, another one of these disappointing tight ends, bounces back. To what extent, we'll find out. And then Khalil Shakir is my favorite of the Bills receivers from a safety standpoint. He beat up Miami in Week 18 last year. But Keon Coleman could have a big game as well. Florida State guy coming back to the state, I'm sure is going to want to do some things.
Do you like the Dolphins tonight? The Bills have been our daddies for a very long time now.
Yeah, I think this is the setup. Most home teams on the short week, you tend to lean that way. I think Buffalo is definitely got Miami's number, but we'll see. This is a very revamped Buffalo's team. missing key guys on defense from years past, missing key guys on offense from years past. This is Miami's opportunity to sort of, put their foot down and say, this is our division this year, and we're not going to let it go.
Let me ask you about a couple other games here. Browns and Jaguars, two teams both with playoff aspirations. The loser falls to 0-2. Very desperate situation for both teams. What do you like there?
I think we got to see if the Jaguars can take advantage of the poor play by Deshaun Watson, and will the tackles be there for Cleveland. I like Jerome Ford a lot. I think we saw last week 18 total touches in a game where they were trailing, and that Jacksonville has struggled in defending pass catching running back, so he'll be involved in the passing game. I think Amari Cooper bounces back. The Jaguars just put their best cornerback Tyson Campbell on IR, so that's an opportunity for Cooper to hopefully connect with Deshaun Watson. Those two do not seem to be on the same page, but maybe that changes in this game. And then for Jacksonville, you're starting Travis Etienne. I think Evan Ingram is going to be in a lot of lineups, but he was a little troubling last week because he played his fewest snaps since week 4 of 2022. They have a pretty crowded receiving core right now. So Brian Thomas, Christian Kirk, they're borderline starters in 3 receiver leagues. But really the only slam dunk for the Jaguars is Etienne.
How about the Buccaneers and Lions? That all of a sudden, week 2, that's shaped up to be a really great game.
And you know what? Vegas thinks it's going to be the highest scoring game of the week. So we always like that for fantasy. So I think you look at, first off, for the Lions, who you're starting. Jared Goff was my start of the week last week. He disappointed, only 1 touchdown. But the Bucs have 4 members of their secondary that got hurt in that game last week against Washington. So it should be a big chance for Goff to bounce back statistically. Jameson Williams was a superstar. That's just something you can look at and say, can it continue? I think it can. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, they'll bounce back. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, they're starters. So you're getting almost every Detroit player in your lineup. And then for the Bucs, Baker, best quarterback performance last week fantasy-wise, 4 touchdown passes. This continues a streak of how he ended 2023, continues into 2024. Mike Evans, as long as he's healthy and active, you're starting him. Chris Godwin, same thing. And then Rachaad White still a starting running back also. So, yes, there should be a bonanza, as we like to say.
Colts and Packers, not a whole lot of pass. Well, he actually had a lot of passing yards, not a whole lot of completions, Anthony Richardson. And then on the other side, no Jordan Love.
As of now, yes, Jordan Love not expected to play, but they're holding out hope. So the Packers really is Josh Jacobs, and then I would take a cautious approach with Malik Willis starting for all the receivers. So Jaden Reed, huge game against the Eagles. Christian Watson's got so much potential, but I would sit those guys if you can. And then for the Colts, look, Richardson is going to have a lot of ugly performances, but the numbers by the end of the day, because of how much he'll run, he'll get a big player or two down the field. He's just a fantasy superstar. So must-start guy. Jonathan Taylor, must-start guy. Michael Pittman, more of a number 3 receiver.
And what about the Bengals and Chiefs, and especially on the Bengals side? What do we do there?
Got to find out if T. Higgins is going to play. That kind of would sway things for me when it comes to Joe Burrow. I don't have Burrow as a top 12 quarterback, so he's just outside that range. Want to see something a little bit better because last week was very disappointing taking on the Patriots at home. Busted a lot of survivor pools, I'm sure, after the Bengals lost here. So Jamar Chase still a must-start guy. Zach Moss more of a flex. For the Chiefs, who you're starting. Kelsey will be better. To what extent we'll find out. Mahomes must-start quarterback. Pacheco must-start running back. Rashee Rice is going to be a superstar as long as he's not suspended, which doesn't seem like it's going to happen. So Rice and Mahomes and Pacheco and Kelsey, hopefully, typical games for them.
Jamey,
Xavier Worthy is a good number 3 receiver this week, too.
Okay. Jamey, who are the injury situations that we're keeping an eye on?
So you got Ken Walker in Seattle. That's a big one. See if he's going to be out there. Christian McCaffrey at this point, probably not expecting to play, but keep an eye on that as well. You have T. Higgins at the receiver spot. Jordan Addison's another receiver. Keep an eye on. Keenan Allen's dealing with a heel injury. Keep an eye on that situation there. Jake Ferguson, they're holding out hope if he could play for the Cowboys. Same thing with Jordan Love for the Packers, but probably going to be without those 2 guys. And then we already know David Njoku's been ruled out. So a big piece of that Browns offense is going to be missing.
Excellent job, Jamey. A big one for all of us down here with the Dolphins. Tell everybody how they can check you out leading to tonight's contest and then throughout the weekend. Yeah,
I'm about to go record some DFS lineups for tonight's game. Unfortunately, Josh Allen will be my MVP, but he's just typically beats up the Dolphins too good. But I like Jeff Wilson in tonight's game. And then just CBS Sports HQ, CBSSports.com. You can check us out, all of our content, helping you get your lineups ready for week number 2.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamey. Enjoy the game tonight, this weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Appreciate it, bud.